Hey, folks. I think we're going to wait until a couple minutes after the hour to start the event, but just wanted to start it. For those who are in there, are you able to speak or just do things in the chat room?
I guess if you guys can chat, it'd be good if you can just type.
Yeah. I see Sean's typing.
Okay.
I think for any particular folks, we can invite them to participate. So at the end, we'll probably, if anyone has questions, we'll have them ask in the chat, and then we can invite them to participate.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Clayton. Good. Audio is good. Hey, Alex. Was just chatting with you. Nice to see you again. Be nice if we could play some background music while we're waiting, but
I know.
I don't know enough about Livestorm to get that going.
All right, we can probably start in about like 30 seconds or a minute.
We could wait a couple minutes more, Karan. Make sure more people come in.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but I have a bad habit of being 2 to 3 minutes late to every meeting. So
Silence is good.
my fiance asks me every year what I want for my birthday, and I usually respond peace and quiet. So I feel you, Gary. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate your support. I'll ping some of the other folks that we know registered. Let them know.
Okay, so we're about 6, 8 people in there. All right, how about I start at least the screen share? We can see.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, Okay.
Awesome. I think a couple other folks are joining a couple minutes late, but I think we're good to get going.
Got it. At least what I'll do, Adam, is just start with the introductions, and then we sort of get into this. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, great. So thank you everyone for joining. So my name is Karan Dhillon. I'm a founder of the Contractors Coach, and we're a business coaching company. So we're going to do just introductions first, just first about the Contractors Coach, and then about Beam. I think a lot of the folks, or some of the folks here, are familiar with Beam, but we'll definitely do introductions with Adam. So for us, real quick, we're a team of business coaches. You know, we've all had our background. My background was corporate America. I worked for large billion-dollar software companies, and the team's done the same. They have had different corporate backgrounds, but then about 10 years ago, we formed our team, and we've been doing business coaching for contractors. And so far we're up to like 500-600 contractors that we work with, and specifically helping people develop businesses that are self-running with specific systems and team training. And then of course Adam, he's on that. Adam, do you want to give you a brief intro?
Yeah,
not butchering it.
Yeah. I excited to do this kind of co-webinar. I thought it would be really helpful for a lot of our existing customers, and a great kind of synergy between the two groups, because we are always trying to find ways to help our contractors better manage their business and their finances. And a lot of that goes beyond the systems that you're using. It's also the mentality and how you build your organization. And so I think it's a really good pairing, talking about financial systems and other types of systems and business mentalities. A little bit about myself. I started the company a couple of years ago, and I came from the software industry. So I built software for a company called Stripe, which is one of the largest payment companies in the US. And I wanted to bring a lot of that technology that we had been kind of giving to other startups and other technology companies to an industry that I thought was really, really important and really mattered, which is construction and building. So we want to support folks that are building homes in the United States and infrastructure in the United States, and give them better modern financial tools. And you can see a bunch of logos here of just some of the companies that we work with. They include general contractors, trade contractors, home builders, and more.
Cool. Yeah, actually, and I see some of the people from these logos that are in the presentation, so that's great. All right. So the idea behind what Adam and I are doing here is that we talk to each other. We've both worked for billion-dollar companies. And the idea is, what would happen if you apply the strategies that billion-dollar companies use to become successful, and then apply them to million-dollar companies? Because a lot of the contractors that we work with are in either the single-digit million or double-digit millions. And so, the examples that we've had in the past is that, we had, here's an example of James. He's out of Benicia, which is, I guess, in the Bay Area in California. And he started off at $1 million in revenue. And within this is about a 6-year window, he applied the principles that we're going to discuss today. And now he's running a construction company that's doing $50 million in annual sales. And it doesn't always have to take long. Right, here's Robert Elson Electric. And he had already had a $6 million company, but he was on a fast track because he wanted to get out of Dodge, which is California. He wanted to live in Idaho. And he got his business from 6 million to 11 million within a year. He's got a CEO running the company. He bought himself a little plane, and now he comes, each month, once a month, flies into California to check on his business, and then flies back out of here. And then here's, even a company that was more in like the startup stage, where these guys went from about $500,000 in revenue to 5.5 million in about 4 years, and they now actually have some free time in their life. So it doesn't work just for big companies; it also works for smaller businesses. Now, similar to Adam, what he was mentioning, the principles we're going to talk about today, they kind of work across the board. Here are some of the clients that we work with: general contractors, home remodelers, electric contractors, masonry, concrete. These are the different types of clients that we work with over the course of, the last decade that we've been doing this. The idea behind this is, why is it that what Adam's doing and why is that what we're talking about works across the board? Because a lot of the times that people ask us is, hey, you're not a contractor, so how is it that you can help contractors? And the principles of how businesses are run, right, are very similar across businesses once they reach a certain size. If you're a contractor and you're still wearing the tool belt, swinging the hammer, yes, your individual skills are going to be very important. But once a business reaches a certain size, how businesses are run starts to become very common across the board. So here's an example of what we call the B quadrant business, right? The principle is, in business, you make money in 4 ways. First thing is you make money as an employee. Then some employees get tired. They're like, my boss sucks. I can do this much better. They start their own business, right? So then you become self-employed. You hire a small team of people around you and you sort of become like a small business. But then there's also the business side of things. And the fourth way is you make money as investors. So in the world of business, this is general to all business. These are the 4 ways you make money: as employees, as small business owners, as big business owners, which is the B quadrant, as investors. What is the difference though between small business and the B quadrant, right? Which is kind of what we focus on today. The difference is that these types of businesses focus on running their companies through systems and then bringing people on and training that team on using those systems, right? Because even investors, right? A lot of times when we say who in the world makes the most money, sometimes people think, hey, it's investors, because they think of like people like Warren Buffett. But if you think about Warren Buffett, where does he invest his money, right? He doesn't go into the stock market and buy a few shares. He invests it in businesses, well-run businesses that are run on systems and by teams of people. And that's where he puts his money, because essentially Warren Buffett is a business owner. Right? 95% of the money on the planet is made on the right side, which is between businesses and investors investing in businesses. However, what we find is that 95% of the people live on the left side as employees or small business owners. And the question is why, right? When most of the money is made on the right side, why do people live on the left side? And the reason is that people value something more than money, which is security. Employees like the security of a paycheck. Small business owners like the security of being in control, right? Because a lot of common mindsets you hear is, if it's got to be done right, it's got to be done by me, right? I've got to maintain control because nobody can do it as well as I can, and things like this. People on the right side value something different. And what they value is risk, which is more importantly, how you can manage risk so you can create an unfair advantage for yourself in the marketplace, right? That's because that's how you will succeed and beat pretty much everybody else who's competing with you. And the whole process that we're talking about today is helping smaller business owners, people where the owners are still working in the business at some level, and helping you transition into the B quadrant, which is a business built on systems and on teams that run those systems, where the owners can step back and manage the company versus having to work in it all the time, right? So the 3 strategies we're going to cover today. The first one is what I just talked about. If as an owner, you are looking to create a decent life for yourself. What is a decent life? Where you have some freedom, right? Because you can make money, but if you're tied to the business, that's not a great life. So the way freedom gets created in any business owner's life is on these 2 things that we just discussed: systems and a trained team, right? So if you have a business, if you look at a business basically exists in 3 time zones, right? There's the past, the present, and the future. And all the systems that we discuss in business follow or fall into these time zones. So, for example, what are the systems that are focused on the past? These are cash flow management systems. Cash flow is only important for jobs you've already sold, right? Now you got to finance these jobs. So you got to track cash flow. Then you got to track KPIs or key performance indicators, which tell you how the job is going. Are you making money or are you not making money? And then finally, bookkeeping and taxes, right? This is all about what happened, putting them in the right boxes. How many taxes should I pay? Then what are the systems that deal with the present? This has to do with everything to do with the job, right? Pre-construction. This is scheduling the guys on the job site, making sure they go to the right projects on the right days, ordering materials, make sure you have the right relationships with vendors, with subcontractors, project management. This is understanding, what's going on in the job in real time and having your team be able to follow that so that you are doing jobs in budget, on time. And then customer satisfaction. The whole point of getting this job done is to make sure that your customers are getting exactly what they need and with a high level of satisfaction. Then finally, what are the systems that deal with the future of a business? These are all your marketing and lead generation, making sure that you actually get good, high quality leads and not just tire kickers, and not the people just looking for the cheapest service someone can provide. And then sales, and then recruiting. Any business, especially in construction, is a sum of the types of people working in the business. So the number one job of an owner is to make sure you have the best team. Because in many ways, a construction company is like a sports team, and people with the best players generally win. So when you have a business based on systems, a lot of times a business starts to resemble a lot of work. I got to do work here. I got to do work here. I got to do work here. And then that sort of takes away from really what you're trying to build. And what you're trying to build, like I mentioned, was a business that is in the B quadrant. A business in the B quadrant looks very different to the owner when they're looking at this business, because what that business looks like, and the goal of a successful business owner is to learn how to run a business by the numbers, right? Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, what a business is, it's a series of numbers. Because the thing is, if your numbers are good, your life is great. But if your numbers are not good, I don't care how hard you work, your life's not that great. So what does a business look like when it's run by the numbers? Here's what a business looks like. What the future part of the business is something that looks like this. What are these acronyms? ROMS, that's return on marketing spend. ROAS, that's ROAS, that's return on ad spend. This is the most important part of a business, which is, hey, how's my marketing working? How's my ads working? And if I put $1 into this, how many dollars do I get back? So as an owner, you have to have a clear understanding of this. And once you have leads, what are these C1, C2, C3? What is this? These are my conversion factors, right? C1 is how many of the leads that I get actually set up appointments with us that we can submit a bid to. Then how many of those bids get converted into sales. And so you need to know these numbers to understand the effectiveness of your marketing, your lead qualification, and then your sales process. And then just like we have an employee pipeline in our marketing process, we need to have an employee pipeline, which is, are we talking to people that we don't need yet, but at some point, once we start closing deals, we're going to need these people. And it's not a good idea to try finding employees once we actually have a job, right? That's very reactive. The other understanding is that you should always be classifying employees into A, B, C players. C players are people who can't do the work, right? They're there, but they're causing problems. They're always asking questions. They're not on time, right? These different issues. B players are people who can actually do the job that they're assigned to do. And A players, these are the people that you actually want on your team, because A players can do the work and then some, right? And we'll talk about what these A players, these are like the leaders in your team. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, what these A players actually look like, okay? What is the present of, what are the numbers that sort of define the present of a business? Now, these are target margins. For everybody on the job site, it's not just enough to get the work done on time, on budget. What you're trying to do is hit a certain margin. So the question is, do the leaders in the field understand what these margins are that you're trying to hit? And can they actually track a job to that? And then there's, the other numbers, which is WIP, which is work in progress, which is how much of the work that you're actually working on, how much is complete. And this is not just in terms of tasks and days, but it's also in terms of dollars, right? How much of the work is done, how many dollars are left, how much is invoiced, how much is there left to invoice. Estimated versus actual. Once a job is done, You got to figure out, hey, we budgeted or we bid at these margins. How much did we actually hit? Everybody, not just in the office, but the field needs to understand this. Earlier, we talked about getting good customer reviews, customer satisfaction. One of the most important things to understand for people who are doing client-facing work is that there's basically 4 types of people out there. And that's kind of the concept of the DISC. If you're not familiar with this, the 4 types of people, the D is these are the direct or decision makers. These people just need the bottom line. How much is this going to cost? When are you going to get it done by? Fine. Don't tell me I don't need to know the details. Just get it done. Right? The I's are the influencers. These are the people that they just want you to come in, have a good attitude, maintain good energy. Everybody should, work together. These people love the excitement of the work. They love keeping the energy high. The S's, these are the more, what do you call them, like sympathetic people. These people really, really need to understand that you care about them because these people are caring. They care about you as well. So they're not just trying to squeeze the last dollar out of you. They're almost like the win-win people, right? And then the C's, these could be, I guess in the real world, these could be like the accountants and the lawyers. They need to know every single detail about every single project. And if you don't provide them with some detail or the endless amounts of paperwork, that they're not happy. The important thing to understand is that people who are dealing with clients need to be able to read people and understand who they're dealing with. Because if you deal with a high D, which is the bottom line oriented person, the same way as you would deal with a high C who needs all sorts of detail, that person is going to be very annoyed with you. They're like, you already told me that bottom line, I don't need to know the details. Now, if you flip that, if you try to just go bottom line with a high C person, they're going to think you're running a scam on them, right? So the point here is that you really need to have an understanding in order to get good customer reviews of the type of person you're dealing with, and then be able to modify behavior to cater to making sure that they feel like things are going well, okay? Now with the past, obviously, what are the numbers? Projected 12-week projected cash flow. Adam's going to jump in and talk about this in a second, but one of the most important things is that you need to understand how much cash you need way before you need it. Because what is the best time to go get a loan is when you don't need the money, right? So you're always looking forward, trying to understand your cash flow needs, especially as a fast-growing company. What we've noticed in the last 15 years doing this is that people who grow the fastest run into the most cash flow problems because the cash flow from past jobs cannot finance future growth, especially if it's going fast, right? So you have to have a very forward-looking approach when you're in a fast growth mode. Then the other thing is project costing. It could be just as simple as making sure that the receipts of things that are bought get assigned to the right projects. Or it could go into advanced level costing, which is assigning cost to the individual activities that are done on a job. Because in any job, there are some things that always create the biggest problems. And identifying on a consistent basis which activities are contributing to either gain in profitability or loss in profitability is pretty key. And now finally, the other one is, these are tax concepts around asset depreciation. Like how can you lower your tax bills? Make sure that you have some sense of what your income is, and then what are the assets you can use to depreciate to use depreciation to lower taxes. And then cost segregation. This is not a tax webinar, but these are important things to understand to lower your taxes. All right. So this, if you're looking at it, is what a business looks like to an owner that is running a business by the numbers, right? So now I'm going to have Adam jump in and to see how the software that Beam has actually addresses many of these parts of a business through systems. Okay, Adam?
Yeah. Thank you. And maybe before we even kick it off, just want to really reiterate that. I mean, that's a lot to worry about as a business owner, and that is exactly why building systems and then delegating responsibilities to teammates is so important. Because if you as a business owner have your finger on every single one of those activities, it's going to mean you don't have enough time to do anything at the quality level that you want. So if you spend too much time on cash flow management and on taxes or on project management, that means less time to do sales and hiring and things like that. So we're going to talk about just a handful of these today and how a system like Beam can help with those. Now, of course, there are going to be different systems for different parts. We're not going to help you with hiring, but there are systems out there to help you with hiring. And so my recommendation is, talk to industry experts, professionals who can point you to the right systems. And so today we'll talk about Beam, which is a single financial system that touches on project management, it touches on cash flow management, on bookkeeping, estimate versus actuals, job costing. And we'll talk about how it kind of tracks this mindset of thinking about past, present, future. So, Karan, do you want to click on the next slide? Great. So we're a single financial tool. We help you with sales, finance, and cash. So just, the quick summary is estimating and invoicing, bill payment, expense management, job costing, compliance, and more. This isn't 100% of what we just talked about, but we try to check a lot of those boxes. So our idea is we want to get different teammates from your team all into a single system. We want to get your estimators, we want to get your project managers, we want to get your office managers or your bookkeepers collaborating on a single system. And we want to systematize their work so that you don't need to micromanage every single detail. So you want to go to the next one? So let's talk about the problem that most contractors run into when it comes to their finances. The problem is most contractors tend to look backwards, and they're kind of focused on that very bottom section that was up on a previous slide of just looking at cash flow in the past, just looking at job costs in the past. And what ends up happening is you're signing a contract on day one, you start to buy materials, you start to pay some vendor bills or pay bills for those materials. You have to hit payroll, you're paying some more bills. Finally, you send an invoice, maybe it's for the deposit, maybe it's for a milestone. And then on day 25, maybe at that point, you ask someone to send you a report. And by the time you get around to looking at that report, by the time it's ready, you realize I'm over budget, or, our cash flow is not looking so healthy. And once you're at day 30 and you've realized that everything that you've done from day 1 to day 30 has put you in an uncomfortable situation, it's very hard to remediate that. And by the way, 30 days is just one example. We see this happen for larger businesses or more complex businesses. Sometimes they're only realizing they have a problem 60 or 90 days in. And so what we really recommend is, instead of having a system that encourages looking backwards, you instead want to have a system that encourages you to look forwards. Not solely forwards, but looking at the past, the present, and the future at the same time. So let's talk about that, as well as kind of how we systematize this process. So I'm going to go to the next one. Talk about some of the things that don't work for a lot of folks. So one is pen and paper or paper checks. Talk about inability to delegate and kind of lack of visibility into the future. If you're doing things on pen and paper, or if you're writing paper checks out to your subcontractors, you're oftentimes not even going to see that money has hit your bank account until a couple of days later, maybe a couple weeks later, by the time that your accountant has actually classified that. And on pen and paper, things just are very, very hard to track. So the manual reconciliation, the amount of work that causes is a huge burden, and makes it very hard for you to scale your business. You don't see very many billion-dollar companies that do anything on pen and paper, for example. And then for accounting systems, well, accounting systems are pretty much designed to look backwards, and they're not exactly designed for a ton of collaboration. I don't know if anyone here has an estimator or a project manager who loves going into QuickBooks, for example. We do love QuickBooks. It's great for accounting, but a lot of times the rest of the team doesn't want to go in there because it was built for accountants. And then finally, spreadsheets. These are some of the most popular tools in construction and in business in general. But we find that unless you love sitting in spreadsheets all day, they're probably going to go out of date, and there's probably going to be some errors because it's kind of an afterthought, and it tends to be you put in data after the fact. So if you are relying on spreadsheets, it probably means that you're looking backwards and you might even be missing some data. So let's talk about some ways that we can kind of prevent some of these issues. So those systems, we want them to look forward and we want them to automate a lot of that busy work. So for example, you can automate expense management with a card that is integrated into your system. We now have the technology so that every time you swipe your credit card, you can get a push notification or a text message reminding you to categorize that in real time. So it's not something that happens on day 30, it's something that happens continuously throughout the month. And you can now pay bills online, and you can even schedule payment, and you can track all of those things digitally. So if you say, hey, every time a subcontractor sends me an invoice, I'm going to code it and I'm going to schedule, I'm going to get it approved, and then I'm going to schedule payment. It's going to mean that by default, you are tracking all of the data that you need to have a successful bill payment and do all the job costing. Then finally, the third bucket here, the estimate versus actuals and work in progress reports that a lot of contractors don't have the time to put together. It turns out if you're using a good system, you can get those reports for free. So if you're doing all of the work throughout the month to code your bills, code your expenses, associate them with projects, all these reports come for free. And so with a system like Beam or with another system, you start getting these reports in real time instead of having to run them manually. So let's go to the next slide. I want to give just one example. I know I've talked about this a couple of times, but with expense automation, you take your card, you swipe it, that automatically goes into a system. We match it to a vendor, we match it to a cost code. Your project manager, whoever's making that purchase, can scan the receipt in the system, match it up to a project. Now, immediately within seconds, that goes into your dashboard and gets tracked right there. So you can see by cost code, for example, concrete, plumbing, and electrical, what are your actual costs compared to your budget, and where are you sitting over or under? So instead of this being something that happens on day 30, where you realize, hey, I'm actually passing through my budget, and I need to maybe submit a change order or talk to the project manager and see why we're going over budget. This is something that instead of on day 30, you can do it on day 5 or on day 10. I guess I'll pause there. The chat room is quiet. If you do want to say something, you do have a question, feel free to put it into the chat. We'll be checking throughout the webinar. So feel free to put something there if you do have a question, but I'll continue. Just wanted to call that out. Karan, do you want to go to the next slide?
Sure.
Another example is bill payment. So rather than taking an invoice from a subcontractor, stamping it or writing on it with what you think it codes to, putting it on your desk, and then asking someone to pay that bill, you can put together a system that leverages your team to automate this. So for example, you can have your office manager add in every single invoice as they come in, code them based off of the information that they have, send them to a project manager for approval, and then send them to you for payment approval. And that's something that is very, very easy to implement in a system like the Beam software, but would be very time consuming and would require a lot of training to do in the real world with papers on a desk. Similarly, scheduling payment, if you want to schedule payment for every Thursday morning, you have to train your team to process on Wednesday, write paper checks on Thursday. You have to tell your subcontractors to come in. A lot of that work, a lot of that busy work is unnecessary when you opt for a digital system. So another example, we want to be able to show you for every single subcontract, what percentage of that subcontract have you completed, what is paid, what is unpaid. That's a view that's really hard to get if you're doing things on pen and paper. You want to go to the next? So just summarizing, we want to help you get all of your financial data to flow through a single system. And we want your entire team to have the correct visibility into that system. That's the thing that unlocks you going from small business to big business, is empowering your teammates to get the data or be able to do the workflows that they need so that you can delegate responsibility. And so you can imagine, your field employees, your project managers, your superintendents, they should be able to go purchase materials and categorize those expenses. Your subcontractors should be able to submit bills to you, potentially through a system like Beam. Your project manager should be able to code and approve them. Your office manager should be able to schedule payments, manage your cash flow. Your project manager should be able to review the job costs and work in progress reports. And then you as the owner, you're kind of the output of that system of just reviewing all the work. So instead of having to do all those things yourself, you're just checking on job profitability, you're checking cash flow, you're working on sales, you're managing your employees, and you're not having to get involved in every single step of the process. Next slide. So just an example here, Sergio is a Beam customer, and he's seen a lot of benefits from this system. From an administrative standpoint, he's saving about 10 hours a week himself. But then from a personnel standpoint, he hasn't had to expand his office. So his office is still very light, and he saved about $60,000 a year in administrative costs. And to adopt a system like this, a lot of times it can be as short as a one-day process. I think we have folks on here who maybe took a little bit more than one day, but probably a lot less than a month. And it's not a huge commitment. Some of the benefits that Sergio saw immediately was he started to see expenses and costs in real time. And he was able to reduce the amount of time he was spending on the billing and the back office so that he could spend more time taking on jobs. So in the last year and a half since he started using Beam, I think his business has almost doubled in size. And he was able to take on more jobs because he was spending less time on the back office and the billing of every single job. And he was also able to hire key employees that he could get to run parts of the job by delegating responsibilities through Beam. So I think there might be one more. Nope, that's it. So that's all for me. We'll talk at the end, but let's talk about some systems outside of finances as well, and go from there.
Yeah. So thanks, Adam. So once you have the foundation in place, we showed you some examples of people that have grown their businesses substantially. So everything that we've discussed now is the foundation layer, which is the systems dividing your business up into the past, the present, and the future, making sure you have systems and the team trained on them, so your business has a foundation to grow. So once you have this foundation in place, like what do you do next to develop them and take your business to the next stage? Strategy number 2 is really understanding the culture of your business and the leadership team in place, because this is what determines the strength of your business. And the strength of a business really comes into play, especially in times when the economy is not doing the best. Because, it's like my coach always says that, look, when times are good, everybody's a genius. The question is, what happens when you face some challenges? The challenges could come from the economy. They could come from, clients, difficult customers, anywhere. So how do you develop a business that is strong through different, no matter what challenges come your way? The most important thing is to focus on company culture. And what company culture is, it is the way work is done within a business. And in order to understand how you develop company culture, it is to look at recurring problems in the business. What are the things that just keep happening that I just wish would stop happening? And then understanding the process of creating like a code. A code is something that everybody understands and everybody agrees to abide by, right? And it also determines how people are treated in the business, which is very important if you want to attract and retain the best players that are available in the space. Because people who are good at what they do will look for the best places to work, not necessarily the highest paying places. And this is where sometimes people, I guess, maybe not focus on the right things, because they're like, hey, I just need to pay people the most money, and that's all I need to do. Because what you need to do is, because people always work with the team that they're working with, not just the paycheck. And a leadership team that upholds the code can be like the biggest glue for building a strong company. So what are some examples of like the company culture or a code of honor, right? These are some things that we've actually built within different businesses. Here's an example: never abandon a teammate in need. This actually comes straight from Robert Elson, like the Elson Electric company that we talked about in the beginning. The idea was that, we've got 2 electricians or 2 employees working in a job site. One guy gets done with all his work. There's still like 30 minutes left of the day, and you can see the other guy is still working, right? What should this person do? Just pack up and leave, or jump in and help the other guy so that both of them can get their work done? Now, when you build a culture like this, the way you will enforce this is to celebrate wins, which is that, hey, if this is something that one employee did for the other, it would be nice if you actually recognize that effort, right? Whether it's like team meetings or weekly meetings, it would be great if you develop a culture or a system where the employee that actually got the help can then bring it up and say, hey, I just want to celebrate this guy here. I was running late, he got done, and he helped me out. And this is great. And, you can reward that through either simple acknowledgement, or give the guy like a $25 gift card to Starbucks, or, something for his employee to go have dinner, his family to go have dinner. It doesn't matter. But the idea is to really start recognize within your company when people do go above and beyond what's just required of them, right? The next one is be on time. It's a pretty simple phrase, but it's so interesting how complicated this is. Like, what does be on time mean? If it's, hey, work starts at 8, does that mean you're rolling into the parking lot at 8? Is that being on time? Or does that mean that you actually show up and, get out of your truck and put your coffee away and sort of show up on the job site at 8 o'clock, right? Or does that mean you showed up 15 minutes before, finished your coffee, put on your tool belt, got yourself organized, and work starts at 8, right? What does being on time mean? Everybody needs to know, and everybody needs to operate from the same definition, okay? Clear up broken agreements quickly. We all have agreements, and sometimes things happen and we can't keep them at the moment. But develop a culture where you acknowledge and then you make it up so that people understand that there is accountability within this company. The other ones, the personal stuff stays at home. It's kind of important, right? Seek results, not sympathy. This almost is so, we've attended team meetings with different clients, and there's so many times people are discussing the problems and the this, the that. And the idea is it's just constant sympathy seeking, right? It might be generational. I don't know what it is, but this is prevalent more and more. And the idea is to get people focused on just make sure that you're focused on results, because those are really what you get paid for, right? So these are just some examples of what a code of honor or company culture focuses on. Now, the leadership team that has to enforce this is very important. And this is key, is to understand what a leader is, right? Because a lot of times people think, hey, this guy is responsible for this team, so he's a leader. Maybe, right? So what is a leader? A leader is somebody, most importantly, somebody that can bring out the best in others. Number one, they treat people with respect. But secondly, they enforce accountability, right? A lot of times what we found is project managers, and especially people in the field, they are more focused on being liked by the guys versus making sure that the time cards are submitted on time, that people are not taking extra time for lunch, or they're not just running out every 10 minutes to Home Depot just to buy a part, right? There is accountability that is enforced by the people who are in the field, because that is what creates respect, right? The other thing is that if someone genuinely makes a mistake, that they use these mistakes to teach versus punish, right? There's a very different culture that gets created out of this. And then see and communicate the brightness of the future. Now, what that actually means is that if you have a strategic plan that you're operating from, right? People know where this business is going. The leaders of your business can actually communicate to the employees in the field how their piece of what they're doing is connected to the big picture in the company. And this piece actually gets lost the most, especially when a business is growing fast. People come to the job site, they just show up, do their work, go home. They have no idea how what they're doing is connected to the big picture. And it is up to the leaders within the business at different levels to make sure that they keep people and give people an understanding what the big picture is and how what they're doing is connected to the big picture. And finally, the biggest piece of being a leader. Okay, a leader is somebody that can take things off the owner's plate, that can take ownership of their position. Because if you're an owner of the business, think about it like this. If you have enough of these people in your business, people that can take things off your plate, you get enough of these people in place, what happens to the amount of work that you have to do? Obviously, if you understand what I'm saying, the amount of work you have to do in the business starts to get less and less, and you can then flip around and focus on working on the business. And your job is to go out there and promote the business and grow the company, right? So when you understand this is kind of what the org chart or the organizational structure of a business that grows quickly looks like. As an owner, you're responsible for strategy, of leadership, and ultimately for all the results the business produces. Your job is to develop a leadership team that focuses on typically the things of the past. That's what the office is for. Of the present, that's what the supervisors and project managers are for. And of the future, right? That's what sales and marketing managers are for. So what are the past activities look like? The things that we talked about, a majority of the systems. The present activities, right? These are the people who are the schedulers, the buyers, the foremen, the field employees. And once you grow enough, account managers, right? These are the people that make sure that customers are happy. And then finally, the things that focus on the future, right? These are the things you assign and you hand off last in some ways, right? These are the lead generation activities, lead qualifications, estimating, and sales. So the idea here is, as an owner, what you're looking to do is you're looking to develop a business that starts to look something like this, which has a leadership team in place, which has the activities of the past, the present, and the future handled through systems, many of them that Adam just talked about, but also has a team that is trained on using those systems, okay? Which is going to allow you as the leader to step back and start managing this business versus being stuck working in the day-to-day operations, right? So that's like the second strategy that we're talking about here today. And finally, the third strategy, this is the biggest impact on your business, is to understand that as an owner, your business is a reflection of you, right? What does that actually mean? What that means is that your mindset, right? Your mindset has the biggest impact on your business. What does that mean when I say mindset? Okay. When we talk about our mind, right? Our brain has conscious and subconscious, right? Those are the two parts of our brain. And most experts agree, right? 10% of our brain is conscious, right? The things that we think about, our feelings, things like that. However, 90% of our brain is basically the subconscious part of our brain. So what is this subconscious part of our brain? This is a part of our brain that controls our habits. What are habits? Things that we do all the time without really realizing we're doing them. It's like driving a car, right? If you remember at the beginning when we wanted to learn how to drive a car, it took a lot of conscious effort. Right? Where's the steering wheel? How do I turn this thing on? Like all the systems. And if you're old enough to remember how to drive a stick shift, the goddamn clutch, right? That was the biggest problem. However, now, it's just a habit. You can do it without thinking. The important thing to understand is that's sort of how we also run our businesses. Eventually, once we start doing things, we just do these things out of habit. And if your results are not what you want, or if you're trying to create the results that you don't have today, you're going to have to start really looking at your habits as an owner, right? The other thing is that you have to start becoming aware of something that we call the little voice. Because what you are as a person is a series of programs that just run in your mind, right? These are programs that we've collected over since the time we were a kid. We learned these from our parents, from school, from the people that we were in relationships with, from people that we worked with, right? These things, they constantly run in the background and they control the things that we do. Well, I'll give you an example. We had a client of ours who was stuck like between $3 and $4 million in revenue. And he's like, I don't understand. I've been doing this. I've been working so hard for the last 4 years. I can't get past this number. And then he also showed us a plaque that his employees gave him. And the plaque said control freak, right? I'm like, do you think that these two things might be connected? It took him a hard time to figure out that, constantly trying to control every little piece of the business is what is capping your business. Because things what you have to understand, and winners understand this principle. And the principle is that success, whatever you define success as, whether it's growing your business to 10 to 50 million, or it's having free time to spend with your family, it requires energy. It is going to require a lot of energy for you to get past the habits that you've built up and get past the programming that you're operating from. Because once you understand this, it allows you to get out of your own way and start to take responsibility for all of the things that are happening in your life. Because what responsibility is very different from blame, by the way, right? What responsibility is that you are responsible for all the results that are being created in your life, more specifically in your business, right? The challenge is, and this is what we find for people who come into the program but don't succeed. Every year, there's about like 10% of these people. What these people, instead of taking responsibility, they focus on denial, which is like, look, I'm not the problem, it's my employees, right? I just don't have the time to do this. And these people focus on laying blame. Like, look, it's not me, it's this guy. He doesn't know what he's doing. Or I just don't have this system. It's too expensive. I don't know how to do this. The other thing is then they start to justify. Well, business is hard. Obviously, in order to be more successful, I need to work harder. I'm already working 12 hours. There's no more time in the day. There's no way I can grow my business. People like this get so burnt out and so frustrated, eventually all they can do is just quit, right? Turn the lights off and just go and turn out, sometimes just, shut their business down. But what we're talking about is taking responsibility, and when we talk about living above the line and taking full and complete responsibility for your results. Now, what does that look like in real life when you actually start doing this? What that looks like is to understand the different stages of growth in a business, right? The purpose of being in business is to develop a business that's in a position of power. What a position of power looks like is that in your space, your business is the go-to business for the people looking for what you're providing, right? But generally businesses don't start out up here. They start at a stage what we call invisible. If two of us started a business, we get started, the business is invisible, nobody knows us yet. Then what happens is if we really go out there and start talking about our business, start promoting our company, work will start to come in. Then what typically happens is that type of business goes into chaos, right? What chaos looks like is businesses work is up one day, down the other. It's just the amount of work fluctuates. Why? Because you haven't built in the right systems that we talked about earlier, right? Most businesses operate in this chaos stage, right? Work is coming in, everybody's grinding as hard as they can, and it's basically just a glorified job. And most businesses do not get past this stage because it's so hard just to get the day-to-day operations going. But if you understand the fundamentals, which is, hey, build some systems, get a team in place, and get that team trained on those systems, then you move to the next stage, which is stability. But here, work is coming in, but it's being handled, right? The systems are there, the people are trained, and your business is finally starting to make money, right, on a consistent basis. Here, you are moving to what's called a stage 2 business, where now it's making money, it's growing, but the owner is still involved managing this business constantly, right? Now, in order to get past this stage, you have to develop the second and the third levels that we just discussed, right? And your job here is to get your business to a level of abundance. This is where you're not just making money, but you are like providing services or expanding the geographies that your business can operate in. This is where you're now starting to move towards a position of power, where your business can grow not just linearly, but exponentially. You're starting to make way more money, have way more free time than before. This is what the stage 3 business that we talked about, where your business has an abundance of time, you have an abundance of money, and you have an abundance of, more importantly, energy. And your business is starting to move into what we call becoming a financial asset. This is where other people are actually going to be interested in investing in your business. Typically, this is how you develop a business that goes past the $10 million stage. Okay, so these are the different stages of growth, and it's important to be aware of where your business is in each of these, so that you understand what you need to do to move to the next stage. We've sort of condensed all of this stuff into what we call a business in a coffee cup. The idea here is that if you think about your business, as a cup of coffee. If you just look at a cup of coffee, let's say you go out there and you like coffee, you go and buy, like you climb the highest mountain, you find the best coffee bean and you grind this up and you put this into this cup of coffee. Now you have the best cup of coffee in the world, right? In a business, what does this coffee resemble? This coffee is the business strategy that you implement, the systems that you need, the team members that you need to run those systems, right? That's your cup of coffee. Now, what happens though if you have the best cup of coffee in this cup, but your cup has a crack in it? What is going to happen to this coffee? Obviously, it's going to spill out onto the table or the floor, right? Did it matter that you have the best cup of coffee or the best coffee in this cup? No. That's why if you have the best strategy, the best systems, the best team, if you don't have a solid cup, it doesn't matter. Now, what does the cup represent in a business? It is your culture and your leadership team. That is what provides strength to the business, so that when times are tough, the coffee doesn't just spill out, right? Everybody in your team doesn't bail because just times got tough. Okay. Now that the cup itself, the strength of the cup is the culture and the leadership. The third thing is how much coffee can this cup hold depends on the size of the cup. Okay. So what does that mean in business? What determines the size, which is basically how big can you grow this business, is your mindset and the vision that you have for your business in your life, right? That determines how big of a business you can grow. Okay, and that your mindset and vision has the largest impact on your business, right? So these three things put together, really what it takes to develop a very successful business that can not only make a lot of money, but develop a great life for the owner. Now, this is just examples of people. There's hundreds of people that we've worked with, but these are just some people who have given us videos. Like Billy, he's a developer on the top left. He's built a $5 million business, within a couple of years, just by hiring a good leadership team and have good systems in place. Brand at the bottom, I'm not going to go into all these. This is a guy, his business is in California, but he lives in Hawaii because he got the systems he talked about, got a good leadership team in place. He built his own vision to now where he can live anywhere, right? So we have lots and lots of these examples, and they're using great systems, have a good leadership team in place, and more importantly, they're always working on themselves, their own mindset. Okay, so where do we go from here? So what we're offering for anybody that's on this session is a free 90-minute business strategy session. We're going to follow up with you guys after this, and what we're going to help you do is, if this is of interest, we're going to sit down with you and look at your business and show you the specific business strategies you will need in your business to take your business to the next level. We'll also help you develop what's called a financial model of the business, that if you implement the strategies that we've discussed, what will the numbers in your business start to look like? Because that we talked about earlier, a business at the end of the day is just a bunch of numbers, right? And then we'll help you review implementation options, that if you like the strategies, you like the numbers, like what are different ways you can actually implement them in your business. You can book this session for free from our website right now, from going to thecontractorscoach.com, or we'll follow up with you as well and help you book a session so that you can actually understand how this whole applies to your company. And then in addition, Adam's also going to be offering you guys a free demo, meet with one of the Beam experts, and then get a free 30-day trial and see how their system can work in your business. Okay. So I think that's kind of what we had.
Yeah, I know we're short on time, but would love, I see Evan's already typing. Please, and Karan, I think you can stop sharing your screen too.
I know, I figured out how to do that, man.
I think if you hit share at the bottom.
Oops. I'm going to always place share.
Hit share and then
disable. Sorry. There we go.
Thanks everyone for coming. I know we were hoping to finish up closer to 45 minutes, but everything always takes a little bit longer when you're presenting. Would love for you guys to put in some questions if you want to stay in and do a little bit of Q&A. We can go a little bit over. And then we'll send out a recording of this if you want to share it with your teammates or colleagues. And we'll try to answer as many questions as we can before the call's over.
Yossi, we'll actually be sending out the link in an email right after this. So just look for an email shortly, and you'll have the ability to book a session with either Adam or myself.
Awesome. Thanks, Yossi.
All right. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah. Anyone else if you want to ask another question? Oh, here we go.
Let me just read it out. So when a business is in a transitory phase where they have begun to delegate by hiring employees, what is the ideal function of the leadership team besides filling in the holes of bookkeeping, project management, sales? It seems like building the company culture is the primary goal. Yeah, so it's, in some ways you look at a business like like a sports team, like a football team, right? The idea is that you have the leaders, who are the leaders of the different teams, the offense, the defense, and the special teams. Yes, these people have their assigned roles, but their goal is to really make sure that the team works cohesively and they can actually, operate at a high level. And their job is, not only just doing their own job, but motivation, making sure that these people have the energy levels to come in and operate at a high level. But most importantly, the job of the leadership team is to make sure that the owner is not stuck in dealing with the day-to-day operations of the business. Because the way to develop a successful business is to free up the owner to start facing outwards, to start going out there and promoting the business and growing the client base of the business, so that you have a high quality of clients coming in and a team that is able to then execute at a high level on the projects that are coming in. Is that making sense?
Yeah, I would just add one more thing from my perspective as someone who's also grown, small business. Is the leader is there to set the pace and to implement the systems. And so, as the owner, you want to kind of set the standard for what it means to be a great estimator, or what it means to be a great project manager as you start to bring on folks. And so when you bring on your first project manager, you do want the leader to set the bar and set the standard and implement the systems for that first project manager, so that first project manager can, they have a starting point essentially. But yeah, mirroring everything else. And then Clayton, I see you have 2 more questions. I'm happy to answer the questions about Beam offline, but for some of our contractors, we do replace QuickBooks. For others, we just synchronize back to QuickBooks. Again, QuickBooks is more of that, past system, and we handle the future, the past, and the present. So if you want to have your bookkeeper or your accountant go into QuickBooks at the end of the year, they can. But the goal is your project managers, your estimators, your office managers spending more time in Beam and less time in QuickBooks. Thank you, Alex. And yeah, Clayton, we'll follow up over email.
And then somebody asked, how many sessions are usually needed with Karan to develop a successful business, and what is the usual cost? So obviously this is a tricky one, because it all depends what stage your business is at and what you're looking to take it. So one of the things, I guess it is best, we've had clients who've been with us for 3 months, 6 months, 8 years. So it all depends on what you are trying to do. So it's really hard to answer this question without understanding your business. The best thing is that when we set up a call after this, we can go into your business in detail and then explain to you exactly, what the process would look like for your company. So hopefully that gives you at least some direction on what we're discussing.
Awesome. Well, we will follow up. I see. Feel free to keep coming in with the questions, but we'll follow up. Would love for everyone's feedback on this format, and looking forward to chatting more with everyone here.
Awesome. Evan, thank you for your time as well.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.